What's shakin' bacons? Let's talk about Captain Marvel. I'm going to very quickly start off by saying, if you are here to see me say something about how amazing this movie is, or if you are here to see me talk about how terrible this movie is, I'm going to disappoint you because I'm not going to say either of those things in this review. In fact, I am probably not even going to go into spoilers in this review. It will be non-spoilers because I honestly can't make myself care enough about this film to really discuss it in depth. However, if you do want to see me discuss things in depth, as a new feature over on Patreon, I've been putting out some audio logs or pseudo podcasts, if you will, for patrons at every level. So if you are interested, make sure you go check it out. There's a link to that in the description box below. And let's just talk about this film. This film was directed and written by Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck. It is the origin story of Captain Marvel, aka Carol Danvers. And we are introduced to her as a Kree hero who cannot remember her past except in flashbacks and in dreams that she has. She goes out on a mission to apprehend some alien infiltrators or alien terrorists and ends up crash landing on Earth, which is where she meets Nick Fury and becomes embroiled in a race to discover her true identity before the aliens she has been tracking are able to overcome her and her new allies. That is a very brief, non-spoilers summary for you of this movie. Now, my general feelings on this film are, if I could summarize it, it's like if it was water, it wouldn't be hot water and it wouldn't be cold water. It's just kind of lukewarm. If I had to summarize it in one word, it would be lackluster, sadly. It's not a bad movie and it's enjoyable to watch if you appreciate the character of Captain Marvel, if you are a longtime fan of Captain Marvel, or if having a cohesive story and plot line that are not based around a central message only matter to you. The main issue with this story is that it was focused more on the message behind the movie and what this film was supposed to mean than it was on actually telling, I feel, a strong, robust story. And because of that, this movie honestly kind of felt like it was just really flashes of cameos and setups that make things in the current Marvel movies make a little more sense, and it was just really a tie-in to explain where Captain Marvel has been while all of the other MCU films have taken place and why she hasn't been there to help out, and exactly what the import of Nick Fury beepering her or trying to reach her was at the end of Infinity War. But because this film is really just sort of a stopgap, there's no real feeling of urgency or suspense throughout the whole thing. Even during the plot twist, which I say twist, it was very predictable. The entire movie was actually pretty predictable. And the twist itself happened at a point in the film that started to make the story overall more interesting to me. And unfortunately, right when the twist happens, and I thought that the story would get better and it would improve and move on from just this very stable groundwork that it had just kind of focused on. It didn't take any giant leaps or any kind of great risks. Instead of launching the story the way I thought it would, the entire film kind of grinds to a halt, and you end up getting stagnated in the middle of the film, literally with them sitting for what felt like quite a while, and nothing really happens. And you've just got this huge section right after the twist where the entire movie just bogs down. So instead of it launching the story, it really just slowed it down for me. Because the story never really takes off, it's hard to buy into the character of Carol Danvers. You're never given enough of a reason or a struggle that this character is experiencing to really buy into her as a fallible human or as someone that you can relate to. There's a degree of relatability that's missing. And in many ways, it reminded me of Superman, where you may have one or two weaknesses, and in this film, the movie tries to set up trying to recover her memory, and there's like a mental struggle as a weakness. But you're really just having a strong character continue to just be a strong character, and there's no development or arc really that makes you buy into them. Unfortunately, what came along with that is Brie Larson is not providing any real depth to the character of Captain Marvel in this film. Granted, I'm not sure that there was a lot of depth that was written into this film. It's not that Brie Larson is a bad actress, because I don't think she's a bad actress. The problem is when you have her in scenes with far better actors and actresses, which is most of this film, her deficiencies as an actress are really pulled into glaring profile. And you notice that there is a lack of well-roundedness, and there's a lack of emotion that comes through in her performance. And a lot of the film really just seemed to be her standing in this very strong pose. Oh, excuse me. She had her hair over half her face for like half the movie, and she's just standing in this strong pose with her hair over half the face. That, or she's constantly getting up from being knocked down, which is kind of like the theme of the movie. I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down. I get knocked down. I don't know. I did love in this film the Stanley tribute at the beginning, and I really loved, like, there's a character named Goose who is the shit. I love Goose. And Nick Fury's development within the film is kind of interesting to watch as well. But when you have a film that's about Captain Marvel, ironically, it didn't feel much like a Marvel film to me, because compared to the other MCU films, even the other filler MCU films like Ant-Man and the Wasp, there was just a very noticeably lacking set of characters, other than the ones we saw cameos from in this, for you to buy into and invest in. And it was truly to the detriment of the film. It felt to me the way that the Harry Potter Fantastic Beasts 2 film felt to me. There was not a lot of story within it, because it was mostly trying to reference things that had already happened in the current storyline. And it was really just an explanation. And there's a way to do that very well. I love Rogue One, for example. We already know what happened before Rogue One. We know what happened after Rogue One. But the difference is we have very relatable characters, and you have situations that are filled with urgency and with a sense of suspense, because you don't know what's going to happen to them. Although they do set up very cleverly, I think, the tie-in for why Captain Marvel was not available during the other films and the other events that were happening on Earth. And I think it's clever the way they did that, but just having a bit of a clever explanation for how Fury contacted her at the end of the movie does not excuse the rest of just how uneventful the rest of the film was. Even though personally, I don't think that we should be comparing this movie to Wonder Woman, it's going to happen, right? Because Wonder Woman was it's not the first female-centric film, but it was a big deal for DC, and Wonder Woman was fantastic. When I saw Wonder Woman, it filled a void in me that I didn't know existed. And watching that movie for me with a very relatable character who wasn't even fully necessarily human, right? She's a goddess. Watching that film to me and just watching the struggles of the characters within Wonder Woman struck a chord with me that I didn't know I was missing, especially as a woman who loves comic books and movies and superheroes and things like that and science fiction. Seeing that come to life on the big screen through Wonder Woman, like the scene where she gets out of the pit with the shield and she's just like, I know that I may be risking everything here, but I'll be damned if I don't do something to help out. It was so empowering for me. And I'm gonna admit to you guys, I'm such a dork. I cried watching that movie because it was amazing to me to see something so relatable to me represented in such an empowering way. I was hoping that I would feel the same way watching Captain Marvel, and I just didn't, because this character is not relatable. And I feel bad in some ways for saying that, because I know this is like the Marvel answer to it. But I think the problem is Marvel's banking on the fact that this movie is it's their first movie about a woman lead that we talk about. As somebody pointed out in the comments before, we always forget about Elektra. But it was not anywhere near the level of Wonder Woman, and it's not anywhere near the level of older films that have come out, like with Ripley in the Alien series, or Princess Leia, or even Padme Amidala, which I've talked about before. You can have very strong leads and not make your whole movie about just the message of us supporting each other, because that's genuinely what this film was about. It was just about her getting knocked down and standing up again, but she's already so strong that you're like, okay, that's great. Like, we all know you're going to stand up and you're not going to stay down. We understand that that's the theme. You don't need to hammer that home constantly. What you needed to do is give us somebody we could relate to, and she's just not relatable. There's a bunch of references to her past in this, and they attempt to have this right after the plot twist. That entirely too long amount of time is spent attempting to make her as a character more relatable, but it happens near like the ending third of the film, and you've completely tanked the story and the pacing at this point. And by the time that is introduced, you've lost the empathy that you had or the willingness to care for the character. And it's a shame, because I think they probably could have done a lot more with this movie than they did. For me, my final rating for Captain Marvel is kind of lukewarm, just like I think the movie is fairly lukewarm. It's not great. It's not bad. It's just meh. So my final rating for Captain Marvel is 57%. That's my thoughts on it. I'm not going to have a spoiler section because honestly, it was so lukewarm that I can't make myself care anymore about this movie. I just can't. I'm sorry for those of you that like listening and talking to me about the spoiler stuff. And if you want to do that in the comments below, just make sure you say spoilers and I'll chat with you down there about it. But for this film, I just could not get myself excited about it because it was just kind of boring and I wanted it to end. Let me know what you guys thought. If you enjoyed this more than I did, if you thought it was way worse than I did. And I guess I will catch you later.